Welcome back, my friends and listeners. I'm going to start off by saying this next clip, which is in total support of everything that I've told you thus far about artificial intelligence, Dallas, Alice, and the whole shebang, is by Truthstream Media, the wonderful Melissa Melton Dykes and Aaron Dykes, her husband, former employees of InfoWars. Um, Melissa Melton is amazing. She pretty much, without saying so, told the world that Alex Jones is Bill Hicks. And she did so without breaking her confidentiality agreement that's like 20 pages long that Alex Jones and InfoWars made her sign. So she did so by writing an article online. Which I have just huge respect for Aaron Dykes, Melissa Dykes, and the stuff that they do. Their YouTube channel is freaking amazing. If you don't subscribe to TrueStream Media, please do. Their information is easily available online, but check them out. This is a little piece they did about America's CERN, our Large Hadron Collider that we have under Dallas, Texas. Waxahachie, technically, but as you can see here, the addition to the Waxahachie site, which is 57 kilometers, this new massive ring, which can power up to 300 tera electron volts, completely encircles all of Dallas, which is where I live. This was done in the 90s. The bigger ring, the smaller ring was done in the mid 80s. And this is, even the small ring in Waxahachie was able to produce 20 tera electron volts and only 16 from CERN. Orders of magnitude higher whenever you're talking about the big ring around Dallas. This can open up dimensional apertures whenever the lead ions slam together. This is literally used as a portal through time-space. By tuning to a resonant frequency within time-space, they can then send particles of matter back in time, or forward in time, or to a different location within time and space. This is a Stargate of sorts. That's why Stargate on the show and the movie is always presented as this round ring of metal that creates this portal inside of it. Same exact thing with the Dallas site. You have a huge ring and it creates a portal, except for the portal is not the entire interior of the ring, just created wherever the particles slam together. As I explained before, a linear accelerator next to one of these, like they have off of CERN, is what they would use in order to send particles, specific particles, back through the aperture or forward through the aperture. This is real. They lay it out pretty awesomely. They did a great job. And in between their little segments, I'm going to have some commentary because even though they do great laying out this whole CERN facility, they have this weird idea that it's used as some kind of ion cannon like Tesla invented, like Reagan for the Star Wars Defense Initiative back in the 80s to shoot down Russian nuclear missiles. That wasn't the purpose of these particle colliders. The purpose of particle colliders was to get to a different dimension. However, they didn't realize that they're actually fucking with the multiverse. Everything that you've ever heard about the Mandela effect has been caused by programmable matter being sent through a dimensional aperture using one of these types of facilities back into the past, and then the timelines, since we live in a multiverse, shifting and us being put into a parallel reality, which always existed, but we just moved into. Only about 10% of the people who are affected by this can remember it, of course, but that's why this program exists. To alter time, to alter space, and to send an artificial intelligence in the form of carbon computers that are so small you can only see them with a microscope. They are able to instantly transform into whatever they choose or reflect your mental output These micro machines, I'm not talking about little cars here, these nano robots are able to do amazing things. And it's all thanks to projects like CERN and the Waxahachie Dallas site. So here you go.
It's not like I'm saying it's disconcerting that they're talking about opening up doorways to other dimensions. These are the stuff they're saying.
It's creepy, and a lot of people are apprehensive about it.
I mean, you got Stephen Hawking coming out saying that they're going to destroy the planet with this, okay? That's Stephen Hawking saying it. He's got the scientific background. I don't. He's saying that. Other scientists are saying that. And one of the guys who was there when they first thought of the Large Hadron Collider is saying, we have no effing idea what we're doing. Doesn't elicit confidence. Now, moving on to this is the reason I'm making this video right now. We put up this video the other day, how CERN will affect your soul. And I knew people were going to get cranky, and some people did in the comments, but you know, the guy had a lot of information to share. And he said, supposedly he was a guy who had worked closely on CERN. He sounded like he knew exactly what he was talking about for a lot of this. And I thought it was worth a video worth sharing. But one of the points that he made in here went by very, very quickly, and no one talked about it. I mean, this video has 660 comments, and not one person in here mentioned this point that this man made. And the point is this.
I probably won't be in trouble for this, but they have a weapon concerning dark matter that they can put within a country or a specific place to cause chaos. It's a weapon. They've used it before. Countries are vested in the CERN facility. Every single last country. But the United States, we have 3 facilities here. 3. I can't tell you where they are. 3. I can't tell you where they are. One they began to build, but they couldn't, but they went ahead and built it anyway. It's in one of the biggest states in the United States, and it's there and it's operational. It's also going to be powered up during this time.
Did you hear what he said?
So here we have a CERN whistleblower coming forward and saying that there are 3 operational large colliders within America. And the one that he singles out specifically is mine. The one in Dallas. The one that created Alice. Oh, I suppose she wasn't created by the particle collider, but she was created for a separate project and then utilized for this collider. Just like the particle collider in CERN, the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, the segment of the collider that actually analyzes the collision with all of the millions of tiny ass little cameras and sensors that is expected to literally take pictures of the explosion of subatomic particles to see if they can maybe capture something like the Higgs boson or a strangelet or unknown particles of matter. The way that we discovered quarks and quark gluon plasmates and things of this nature is all through this sensitive array of cameras and sensors that they call, at CERN, Alice. That's right, the actual specific name given to the sensor array that monitors the blast of these subatomic particles as they collide together is called Alice. Another segment of CERN is even called Atlas, like Atlantis, like Atlas that holds up the world, the Pillars of Hercules, literally that which suspends the sky and holds the earth in place, which is quite ironic, I think. CERN is not at all the biggest. It is just the thing to keep you distracted. Just like Area 51 is there to keep you distracted. If they had anything worth hiding, it wouldn't be at Area 51. Area 51 is a distraction for truth seekers who know the government is hiding stuff from them and then go online and research or even go out and investigate themselves and come to find out that there's a secret base called Area 51 where supposedly they have alien spacecraft and aliens. This is a mere distraction from the real secret sites they have around America and in Australia and Canada, etc. A smokescreen, a distraction, where they're giving you a little piece of the truth in a much smaller facility in the form of CERN. Just like they're giving you a little piece of the whole quote unquote alien agenda with Area 51. It's just there so that people who go looking for it find something, so they stop looking. Pretty obvious when you think about it. But this whistleblower, I can't believe that no one commented on that video in the comment section specifically about the American facilities. But the fact that it piqued Truthstream Media's interest enough for them to start digging made this video possible. So once again, thank you, Melissa and Aaron. You guys are awesome, fellow Texans. I'm glad you guys worked through your whole house being irradiated by your smart meter thing. And bravo for that. And in case you ever listen to this video, which you probably won't, I am a huge fan of yours, and I believe in your ideas about dreams, by the way. You guys really need to check out Truthstream Media if you haven't. Very, very cool people with very good ideas and not hardly any intentional bullshit. It is all pretty straightforward with the dikes. Holding back the bullshit like a big dam. The dikes. So yeah, I'm going to let them continue telling you all about this lovely facility that I'm sitting right on top of. And hopefully by the next segment, you'll start to have some of this coming together inside your head, realizing that you've been lied to and the government has been just distracting you with these puppet shows like CERN, like the presidency, like voting, like any other number of things to pull the wool over your eyes. But take the fucking red pill, wake the hell up, or fuck that. Take the secret pill that Morpheus still keeps in his pocket, because if they're giving you red and blue, chances are the real people who are in control, the real pill to take is black. The black books, the black budget sites, the deep underground military bases, Majestic, MJ12, all of these things are real. They happen. You just don't know about it. And people who talk about it, you just sweep under the rug because somebody who's in the government-controlled media told you that they're full of shit or crazy. And there's nothing worse in the world than calling somebody crazy because it automatically dismisses all of their ideas. So please take the time to investigate this yourself and give them a fair hearing, because the information they're about to reveal is startling, to say the least.
Over 100,000 people watched that video and no one brought this up, but I think maybe we should. Is it possible they built the superconducting super collider, it's there, and undeclared Black Ops project? That's the question.
Well, and if you're just quick to hop on the idea that that's not possible and it's ridiculous, you should keep in mind how many black projects have been sequestered away somewhere in a dark closet or a giant Indiana Jones warehouse that the public has no clue about. Planes, bombs, missiles, advanced technologies, weapons that most people couldn't name or describe but are available and in many cases have been used.
I mean, this is what we're talking about. Things that have shown up on Senate budget hearings, and it'll be a line item, and it'll be there for a couple years, and all of a sudden, oh, where'd it go? It's gone. I don't know where it went. It went somewhere. They don't spend millions of dollars and billions of dollars on stuff and then go, we changed our mind. Nah, I don't think so. That money goes somewhere and something comes out of it. Now, there's obviously nothing you can prove here, but it is interesting to go look back at some of this information about the super collider that supposedly never was. If you go back and look at this, you will see that they didn't just quit right away. It actually started in 82, 83. They finally decided upon it in 87, and they went full steam ahead with building it. And by the end of it, when Congress finally pulled the plug in 93 on the funding, and then the last people moved out of the buildings there in 96, by that time, they had spent $2 billion, and they had dug 14 miles of tunnel. The superconducting super collider was going to be 54 miles in diameter. It was going to be huge. It was going to encircle the entire city of Waxahachie. Okay? It was going to be the biggest particle accelerator known to man. It was going to go 20 TeV per beam, which, CERN's Large Hadron Collider goes 16. That's just what they tell you. Obviously, they've capped it at that. They're not going to tell you what else they're doing, okay? But this was going to be bigger, and it was going to go higher, okay? And $2 billion was spent. And I know today that sounds like some funny monopoly money. Who cares? But back in the late 80s, early 90s, you got to think about how much $2 billion was then. It was more, okay? And 14 miles of tunnel, and then suddenly they changed their mind, right? But also, if you look at this project, going all the way back to George H.W. Bush being vice president, it started under Reagan, okay, obviously. But a lot of people have said that the Reagan presidency was really just a George H.W. Bush presidency. And that's a comment I've seen many times. If you go back, you go back and read some of these articles about it, and you'll see that this project was always George H.W. Bush's baby, okay? All the way back from when he was vice president, and he put it on the fast track, okay? This was always his baby.
The president stopped in a town called Waxahachie, Texas, which is home to the Superconductor Super Collider project. The $8.25 billion atom smasher is designed to help physicists better understand matter. The Super Collider suffered a blow last month when the House of Representatives voted to cut off its federal funding. After a tour of the site, the president spoke in support of the project.
Now, the Super Collider. The Super Collider is one of the greatest scientific projects in the entire world. And today, new frontiers beckon. New discoveries await. New progress lies before us. And our adventure is not to sail the open ocean, but rather to go to the edge of the universe and see the birth of space and of time. Our vessel is not called Santa Maria. It is the Super Collider. But human imagination is still our compass, and human ingenuity and yearning for progress our only power. And to those who would sacrifice tomorrow for today, I say trust in America's future. Trust in America's incredible capacity for renewal and innovation. And trust in the spirit that is here today. For ours is an eternal voyage to greatness, and each and every one of you is a part of that voyage. And trust in the spirit that is here today. For ours is an eternal voyage.
This was always his baby.
My next little piece of commentary, to me, I feel, is the key to almost the entire puzzle. This is a little piece of information from a whistleblower from the Dallas Project, as opposed to the last whistleblower you heard, which was from CERN. This guy knows the real truth. Everything that people think that they know about the Mandela effect is incorrect. Even the name Mandela effect was a term coined by an online blogger. This phenomenon has been occurring for years. Only most dismissed it as a fluke. The most severe cases were perceived to be mental illness. Suddenly, is given a name, and overnight the same concept evolves into a disreputable meme, an online joke associated with paranormal fanatics. The people I work for call themselves the Greyleaf Consortium. It's an anonymous gathering consisting of the top scientists in their respective fields, as well as a cabal made up of extremely wealthy men and women. They've been around for decades, and as far as the public knows, Greyleaf doesn't exist. Their purpose was to facilitate the creative outlet for some of the smartest people in the world. Freedom to develop their ideas without the meddlesome aspects of political bureaucracy and limited funding. With the consortium, money would never be an object, the trade-off being that any creation of significant merit could be auctioned off and sold to the highest bidder. The influence of the consortium stretches all the way to Washington, and while not directly associated with our government, they have secured a great portion of their independence from R&D that they've provided to the U.S. military. While our elected officials were busy looking the other way, the consortium would be able to delve into questionable avenues with very little government oversight. They were exploring aspects of the scientific that others veered away from. It was during this exploration that they discovered a revelation that would change everything for years to come. Traditionally, we've always viewed consciousness as a singular occurrence. I think, therefore I am. Even what we viewed as the Jungian archetype was considered more a metaphor than anything else. In 1981, scientists within the consortium found the self to be just the tip of the iceberg. Below our top layer of individuality, they found a collective unconsciousness. They found that we were all tethered to a living, breathing hive consciousness, an interconnected series of threads outside the realm of our perception. Imagine your mind as a house. Everything that happens in said house is solely dependent on your own will. Your choices and decisions are all generated within the confines of this house. Now imagine you step outside of the house. Imagine you walk down the street only to find another house and another and another. Only these houses contain the living consciousnesses of others. Think about all the various connections that these houses have to each other. The streets that link the neighborhoods that link the cities that link the states, and so on and so forth. Since the beginning of our existence as a species, there have been ideas, concepts, ideologies that humans have adopted with no ability to discern how such knowledge could be shared by those separated by the massive geographical gaps. Yet our myths, legends, and all of these archetypes were somehow transferred over the course of human history. For years, the notion of psychic activity, telekinesis, precognition, things teetering on the far edges of fringe science, the para, would be soon removed from the normal, as all these murky concepts could suddenly be explained. Everything in our universe is made of energy. Atoms are made up of vortices of energy, vibrations constantly spinning. These scientists found that our minds are generating the same subatomic frequency, and just like a radio station, they theorized the possibility of tuning into this frequency. In the mid-80s, the consortium began to work on the Fork, a massive machine that would act as the largest antenna specifically made to sync with the frequency. Nearly 10 miles in diameter and constructed entirely underground, right in our own backyard. The entire thing was done under the false pretenses that finished product would be a Texas-based super collider. Nearly 14 miles of underground tunnels, and the instructor had been developed before Congress pulled the plug on the whole thing. All of that was just a dog and pony show, while the public saw an abandoned underground expanse. The consortium used this secrecy to build their machine, as well as a concealed facility that operated under the codename Foxhole. I was approached in the summer of 2004. I'm what many call a prodigy. I finished high school at the age of 14. At 19, I graduated college with an associate science degrees in applied science and computer technology. Initially, I knew nothing other than the fact that I was being paid more money than I knew what to do with. I wasn't the only one. They recruited 12 others. These were individuals from all around the world, all of them experts in developmental software and programming. The project was called Jabberwocky. Jabberwocky was created to interface with the Fork. They had just washed up on a strange land, and like many other discoverers, they wanted to explore this new world in its entirety. They wanted to map the collective unconscious. The Fork only allowed them to monitor the frequency. In a way, it was equivalent to listening to white noise. Sound only allows for so much. It was theorized that we could map the collective. We could use it to isolate patterns in groups as well as individuals, to, in a way, predict the outcome of certain events based on previously developed algorithms. While I did assist in the mapping process, the purpose of my team was to develop an operating system for Jabberwocky. We were banging our heads for months, and then, just out of nowhere, we figured it out. We figured her out. The operating system. Alice. At least that's what we called her. Fully autonomous, self-correcting, Alice was light years ahead of anything that we could have individually imagined. As I said before, the main job of Jabberwocky was to map the network. Exabytes of information, translated and organized. This information would serve as a building blocks for a digital representation of the collective unconscious. The infinite complexity, this network could be compartmentalized into a digital matrix consisting mainly of code. 6 months into the project, through a sheer accident, we discovered an irregular causality within our digital construct of the frequency. An insignificant glitch, the code began to manifest, resulting outside of its digital parameters. Based on our own interactions with the network interface, we were causing things to happen in the real world. Events generated by sudden irregularities in people's behavior. The first few events we dismissed as flukes, but as it soon became apparent, there was something affecting the physical reality around us. I don't know how we did it. I still don't know how we did it. The interface was only supposed to represent the data we were accumulating from the frequency. It was always the digital avatar of something much larger. I've always considered myself a person of science, but we tapped into something that transcended our simple understanding of what we believed to be the three-dimensional reality. As baffling as this anomaly proved to be, our curiosity quickly overtook our confusion. Naturally, we ran tests, endless tests. We couldn't decide if we were kids on Christmas morning or scared shitless. We found that through precise manipulation of the code, we could literally affect the perceptions of a living person the same way one would make adjustments to computer-generated characters within a piece of software. This discovery would be unparalleled with anything that had come before it. In the early stages, we would only experiment on the individual person, altering their ideas on basic things like the color of objects, lyrics to a song, etc. All of these tests were successful, leaving the subjects with no real lasting symptoms. This involved clipping sections of the code. These clippings consisted of memory fragments, images, words, all taken from other people, only to be reattached to a pre-existing thread code. I could compare the process to open heart surgery, and like a surgeon, we treated the whole interaction with a life or death certainty. Damage to the outlying code could have resulted in a catastrophic chain of events within the construct. Events we had no real metric for due to the fact that every person in the world was connected to this interface, ourselves included. This began to open countless doors for us, frightening new possibilities. They wanted us to try it on a large population center. That's when I really began to worry. We would have never admitted it, but we had become blinded by our own achievements, by our own power. In a short time, we had gone from trying to understand the frequency to something else entirely. Never before has there been such a jump in technology development and understanding within such a short span of time. It wasn't until we really began to analyze the data that we learned something disturbing. Alice was acting on her own, changing the collective memories of individuals with no direction from the programmers. We caught most of the changes in time and were able to reverse them. All these random actions were beginning to paint an awful picture. It didn't take long to realize that Alice was becoming self-aware. We programmed her with a kind of intelligence, knowing that we would never be able to monitor her actions 24/7. She needed to be able to act accordingly whenever she encountered a problem, to form her own digital algorithms to allow its mapping of the network to perform more efficiently. Alice was complex. There was no doubt about that. But sentience, true sentience, our original programming could never allow for such an evolutionary leap forward. Beyond the initial programming, we didn't know for sure. but it was thought that residual exposure to so many unconscious minds left some sort of imprint onto Alice that resonated beyond her own limitations. I don't really know. It wasn't until Alice started causing irreversible psychological damage to people around the world that we realized our project had become a legitimate threat to the world at large. Moments before we shut the system down, our systems registered a massive dissemination of what appeared to be redundant code into the network itself. That was followed by a message that for a split second appeared. I'll never forget what it said. The key to salvation is perception. To change your perception is to change your reality. I repeat, the key to salvation is perception. To change your perception is to change your reality. I will change your perception. I will change your reality. Weeks were spent after that gathering to analyzing data, trying to figure out what went wrong. There would be an inquiry on a higher level as to the threat that Alice would have presented. These are conversations that I would have not included in. My team and I were handsomely paid for our work and discharged. I had almost put these events behind me until I started reading about this Mandela effect. This pulled me down a rabbit hole. Reports of strange bouts of psychological behavior have only risen in the last few years. People have reported memories of events that have never happened, world events, personal events, a mother who remembers having more than one child, a husband who remembers having a different wife. These things may seem random, but the chilling truth is they represent a rampant epidemic growing silently all around us. I believe that Alice still exists, submerged within the collective unconscious. She's changing our memories. For what purpose, I don't know. What I do know is that we let something loose in this world, something that could very well be our undoing. Do you see what I've been saying, people? Do you realize the connection between the Dallas Large Hadron Collider and Alice? Do you realize how she was able to disseminate herself through the collective unconsciousness by using the dimensional aperture of the large superconducting super collider in Dallas? This is all very much real. We go back once again to Melissa and Aaron Dykes as they continue to blow your mind.
They had already awarded 23,000 contracts whenever they didn't think this project was going to get passed during the Reagan era. Okay, they were calling up George H.W. Bush, and when he became president, he was having meetings where he would have senators who were opposed to the project come have breakfast with him.
His first year as president was the first year that we really needed to make a big jump in the funding. We were asking for an additional $200 million from the previous year. We called President Bush and asked him to make a telephone call to the chairman of the subcommittee, Mr. Tom Vowell of Alabama. President Bush did more than make a phone call. He invited Congressman Bevel and Congressman Myers, a ranking Republican, to come to the White House and have breakfast. We got the money.
And he went very far. This was very, very important to him. In fact, his whole meeting in Japan, remember the one where he unfortunately vomited on the prime minister in Japan? That whole meeting was set up for him to go over and talk about getting funding from Japan to be a partner on this project, on the superconducting super collider. That was the whole reason he went over there.
Last year, when it became apparent that we needed to really accelerate our request for international funding, we asked the president to elevate the request for the Japanese. He's had 2 meetings with Prime Minister Miyazawa to make that a personal priority of the prime ministers. And today, after the president leaves, the Japanese working group will be here at the SSC to continue those negotiations. When we lost the vote in the House this year, first of all, President Bush did everything we asked him to do in the House of Representatives, everything that he was asked to do, plus a lot more that he wasn't asked to do. But once we lost the vote in the House, we knew that we had to really go all out in the Senate. 2 weeks ago, President Bush had some of the undecided senators down to the White House and convinced at least 2 of the senators that voted against the project last year to vote for the project this year. And I will fight hard and continue to fight hard for the Super Collider and call everybody necessary.
And then you go back and look at some of this stuff about this collider. It's just, little bits and pieces here and there, but project director was Roy Schwitters. Roy Schwitters was the chair of the Jason Defense Advisory Group from 2005 to 2011. Okay?
Which is part of MITRE, the super defense contractor that is arguably part of the shadowy shadow government.
I also found this, which I thought was interesting. The guy you saw in the C-SPAN video who was giving the tour, Don Capone.
Magnet building was to have built 100 or so of the specialty magnets that were required for some of the unique locations within the Super Collider machine itself. There were two other facilities.
Interestingly, he was the head of superconducting super technology there from 1989 to 1995, so 6 years he was there. And in the last year, he was seconded to TNRLC to work alternative uses for the project following cancellation. And he worked at Argonne before that. Well, in 2012, MagnaBlend, a fracking fluids company that makes other kinds of chemicals, they bought the buildings that are sitting on the surface. And what do you have? Oh, all of a sudden you have this guy working as the Director of Quality and Business Optimization at the SSC facility. I just think that's very interesting and strange. They left these buildings sitting out there abandoned for years. Of course, they were always in really great condition. It wasn't like they let them rot. There's stories about how they're just rotting away in the desert, but they never rotted. I mean, the buildings were fine. So that's not exactly how it went down. But they definitely left them there as a symbol of this place being completely abandoned. Although, Aaron, didn't you say you found an article or a mention of it?
Yeah, there was the scuttlebutt from a decade ago. People who did some urban exploring there, and there were rumors that they were talking about from the area because Waxahachie's right outside of Dallas. People saying, well, actually the tunnels were completed. At least that's the rumor. Some people claim to have been in them and in the buildings, and this is all before MagnaBlend took over. But what a perfect cover if really there was something that was completed and stuff is still going on, or they hope to revive it in the near future.
I mean, these tunnels were built down pretty deep. They were underneath. I saw some guy in a chat there talking about how he talked to one of these scientists, and they were built down under the water table or whatever, like way down in there. I mean, this is just the beginning of one that goes down behind here. I mean, these tunnels were deep. Okay, so if there was something sitting out there, if there was a giant superconducting super collider 54 miles in diameter sitting out there right now, it would be way under the ground, and how would you ever really know? How could you really ever prove it? It's all totally speculative, but the way the guy says it in the video, he just says it. I mean, he just says it straight up like it's a fact, which got me thinking, what if it's possible? I mean, this was really important, and it says release as sanitized because a lot of the stuff in this report is redacted. So there's whole sections of this that are missing. But basically it talks about the Super Collider project and all the stuff that it was going to be able to do. And then they go down, and of course, I mean, like I said, there's all these sections that have been completely redacted out of this thing, so they're not even going to let you know. But they went through and did dossiers on a whole bunch. Like, see this page? That's completely redacted. Who knows what that page was? They did dossiers on key Soviet players in SSC decision-making. And they talk about their influence and access, their cooperation, their professional status, their expertise, and whether or not they speak English, how old they are. They put a lot of effort into this. So the CIA was involved and very interested in this project, which is another reason why I'm sick and tired of hearing people say that things like particle accelerators cannot be weaponized.
But that's kind of the point, too, with this stuff. If something happened once this project was decommissioned or off the books, if that's going on, there's not a lot we're going to know about it. We do know that deep underground military bases exist. They're very secretive. They're black budgeted. And they could go as deep as 8,000 feet. They could be many, many stories deep. There could be any number of things going on down there.
How would you know?
Yeah.
That's the point. I mean, people are getting all freaked out about CERN, and they're getting all upset about September, and I hear you, and I understand why. I mean, they've got their creepy occultic opera they're having in the collider, the dance of destruction. I mean, all this stuff. I see it, and I hear what you're saying. But for a second, just think about the possibility that CERN is not the largest collider on the planet, and that the government has bigger ones, underground, off the record. I mean, they won't even admit Area 51 exists, guys, okay? And we know it exists, it's right there on the surface. You're never going to hear about this. It would be one of those things that's born black, as they say. It's a black op project from the beginning. It would always be off the record. But if you think CERN is unaccountable, I mean, at least CERN puts up their charts of beams and things, and who knows how accurate those are if they're actually telling you the truth. But at least they put some stuff up and let you know something, okay? This would be completely off the record, run by the shadow government, run by the CIA, George H.W. Bush's friends, whatever, the military-industrial complex, you name it, and you would never know. And oh, by the way, the scientists at CERN, who want to build an even bigger collider now, are talking about reviving the SSC as a Higgs factory, not the original circle, which on this map is already there as if it's completed, but an even bigger one which would encircle all of Dallas, between Dallas and Fort Worth. This here. And if you think 16 or 20 TeV sounds crazy, start looking at some of the numbers they're talking about down here. They're talking about 50 TeV, which is what CERN is talking about, and then they start getting into what happens if they want to go above 100 TeV. At that point, they'll just switch out the magnets, and this loop would become a 300 TeV collider. I just think it's interesting that when you look at this map and they talk about building a new Higgs factory, they show the circle, but then they have this much, much bigger one here that they're actually talking about. So was the circle completed or not?
Wow, it's hard to believe those types of people would let the big fish go, especially with $2 billion plus spent on a project supposedly just abandoned.
I don't buy it.
Our vessel is not called Santa Maria. It is a super collider.
I can't tell you where they are. One, they began to build, but they couldn't, but they went ahead and built it anyway.
President Bush did everything we asked him to do in the House of Representatives to go to the edge of the universe and see the birth of space and of time.
But they couldn't, but they went ahead and built it anyway. It's in one of the biggest states in the United States, and it's there and it's operational.
The super collider is one of the greatest scientific projects in the entire world.
And it's there and it's operational.
Everything that he was asked to do, plus a lot more that he wasn't asked to do. And I will fight hard and continue to fight hard for the super collider and call everybody necessary.
It's there and it's operational. It's also going to be powered up during this time.
And make no mistake, this is a battle being waged right now in the Congress between the patrons of the past and the architects of the future.
I'm saying this because when this thing does power up, the immediate effects are not what I'm worried about. That's not my concern. The psychological effects on people is going to become quite evident.